All right, my friends, welcome back. This is going to be part 17 of my presentation on the flood and Noah's Ark. And so now this video here, we're going to talk about the water. And what I'm doing I'm kind of jumping ahead a little bit because we're going to come back to this topic much later in the presentation. I've still got lots of stuff to cover. And so, but I thought I would go ahead and throw this in because I know there's going to be some folks out there that's going to think, okay, you talked about mountains being formed during the flood when the continent was splitting up from that major supercontinent, and so you know, where did the water go? Where did the water go? And so that's what we're going to talk about here. I just thought I'd go ahead and hit this. Now, I'm not going into it as in depth as I'm going to go into it much later in the presentation, but I'm still going over a decent portion. I think this should suffice on what exactly happened to the water that flooded the planet. And so now I will say this right now, the water is still here. It's still here. And so if it's still here, how come it's not flooding the planet? Well, where did it go? I mean, what happened? And so you got to think again, guys, it's really important to remember that the world that then was, that the Bible talks about, was completely destroyed, completely destroyed. All we can do is theorize on what exactly it looked like geologically. But the Bible gives a few clues, but it's way different now. People were living hundreds, almost 1,000 years people were living. And now you'd be lucky to live 75 years. That's about the lifespan of a human being, at least in America, United States. It's about 72 to 75 years old, though some people can live longer. And we're going to talk about that in a whole totally different new presentation when I get into the microscopic world. But each generation, that, like the generation before me, was better off genetically than I am now. And I'm better off genetically than my kids are. Now, there's things that we do to our bodies that we can do things to our bodies that can make us live much lesser. But that's stuff that we put on our own self, but just genetically, each generation is picking up mutations and problems than the previous generation did not have. But I don't want to get too much on that. We're going to talk about that later. It's not a very encouraging thing to look into, but it is what it is. It really is. But what happened to the water? What happened to the water that was on this planet that flooded the earth? If you'll notice on the screen here, in Genesis chapter 7, verse 20, it says 15 cubits upward did the waters prevail, and the mountains were covered. Now we're talking about, this is the historical biblical flood account in the Bible. Now, when you talk about cubits, there's different types of cubits. If you look at this little chart here, again, you're going to see this chart again. A cubit is about your fingertips to your elbow. And depending on the size of the person, everybody is going to have a different range of measurement of cubit, though I think the standard cubit is about 18 inches. And so that's about standard. So what I'm going to do is we're going to grab the Egyptian long just for the heck of it. Let's go ahead and grab the Egyptian long and let's use that. And so now if you use the Egyptian long, the waters would have been just a hair under 26 feet, And this is above the mountains. Now listen, it says, and the waters, going up to that verse there, and the waters prevail. Did the waters 15 cubits up, or did the waters prevail, and the mountains were covered? Now this is pre-flood. This is pre-flood is what we're talking about, because if you remember in the previous videos, we were talking about how there are mountains changed today today, the mountains that we see today, those were formed after or during the flood. During the flood, when the plates were moving, when the continental plates were moving, this is when these mountain chains were formed. These were not pre-flood mountains, so you need to get that out of your head. The mountains, probably, guys, the mountains were way shorter than what, or smaller than what we have today. And so about 26 feet above those mountains were the waters. The waters covered those mountains. And so enough to do what the Lord wanted them to do, to destroy the planet. And so, or destroy everything that was on dry land. You got to remember, he was after the things that were on dry land is what he was after. And so now the Bible says in Genesis 7:24, and the waters prevailed upon the earth 150 days. 150 days, which is 5 months. 5 months. That's what it took. Now, Noah, and again, we're going to be seeing a lot of the things that I'm saying right now. We're going to be seeing that again later on in the presentation. But just to give you enough to kind of suffice the questions that's probably going in many people's head. The waters were on the planet doing what God wanted it to be done for 5 months. Now, Noah and his family was in the ark for just a hair over a year. And so again, we're going to talk about that later on. Well, I will be hitting on that. And it says, and God remembered Noah and every living thing and all cattle that was with him in the ark, and God made a wind to pass over the earth, and the waters assuaged. It says it assuaged, which means to calm, pacify, lessen, or moderate. And it says, and the fountains also of and the fountains also of the deep, and the windows of heaven were stopped, and the rain from heaven was restrained. Now, just real quick here, notice that the water came from two sources. The fountains also of the deep, that's out of the ground, that's out of the earth, is where this water came from. That's where most of it came from, and it also came from rain. Okay, going on, it says, and the waters returned. Notice this. And the waters returned from off the earth continually. And after the end of 150 days, the waters were abated, which means they subsided or reduced in intensity. So at the end of 5 months, now we're seeing that the Lord is doing something with these waters. He's now taking them and he's putting them into where we see today. And so now the waters are starting to come and they're starting to go. They're starting to do. They're starting to now be pulled up. That could have easily taken another several months. Now remember, he was in that ark for a little over a year, and after that, you're still going to have a destroyed world, and so things are going to have to start to begin to grow. And so, because if they went out of the ark, there's not going to be nothing to eat. So there's going to have to be something that's going to have to start to grow. So if you'll notice here, you got to have a good visual sometimes to get across what you're trying to say. Let's just say the planet here, the flood killed everything on the planet. Okay, now what it's stating here in Scripture is that the waters were abated, which he subsided or reduced significantly, and that the waters were coming and going, and so let's just say on part of this planet here, the waters may have been covering it, and on the other side of the planet, the waters may have been returning, maybe washing off of the earth, and as the Lord is pulling these waters up into where we see them today, they may still be returning and going back and forth, a sloshing of back and forth. I hope I'm relating this. I hope I'm not getting too confusing on this, but it would be like if you was to have like a long container of water, and you was to kind of pick up one side, and the waters would kind of slosh back and forth. That's the type of idea is what I'm getting here. And so the waters would be returning and then going back and forth is what you're getting. So let's just say in North America here, the waters would completely be covered, and then across the other side of the globe here, it would be coming off of that, and so it would be that's what I'm trying to say here, and so but at any rate. Now, we're going to talk about this first paragraph here, but we're going to come back to this information later. But it says the essence of Antarctica is glacial ice cover. The ice, which has accumulated over millions of years, is piled up. Is up to 3 miles deep and covers about 5.3 million square miles, or about 97.6% of the continent. This volume of ice is about 6 million cubic miles. If it were returned to the oceans, it would raise the global sea level about 200 feet. 200 feet. So it's real key to remember that. Where did the water go? It's still here. It's pulled up, and also a large amount of it is in the polar regions. But going on, just the highlighted area in this one, it said at its thickest point, the ice sheet is 4,776 meters, which is about 3 miles deep. It averages 2,160 meters, which is about a mile and a quarter thick, making Antarctica the highest continent. This ice is 90% of the world's ice and 70% of all the world's fresh water. And so it's really important, guys, that you have to, whenever you get people that want to argue and say, well, where's all the water? There's not enough water to flood the earth. And all the water is still here. It's still here. It's just pulled up and it's frozen in certain parts of the world. Now, let's just look at Mars. Now, Mars, there's nothing. When you look at Mars, it's going to be hard to say that there was any type of flood that was on Mars. But listen to this, guys. Mars may be incredibly dry and dusty today, but evidence continues to pile up that it was once a very watery world. Now the Curiosity rover has found signs of an ancient flood of biblical proportions, most likely kicked off by a climate-changing asteroid impact. So even though Mars, they can see it, is so dry, even the secular scientists can say that that planet was flooded at one point in time. When you look at our planet, it's nothing but water. 71% of the surface of the earth is covered by water. At present, the oceans are wider than the continents and much deeper than the continents are high. The volume of water on earth is 10 times greater than the volume of all land above sea level. If all the water, liquid and solid, which would be ice, were removed from the planet and the solid material smoothed off to a completely smooth sphere, and then the water replaced, water would cover the earth to a depth of 3 kilometers, or about 9 to 10,000 feet. Now, what does the Bible have to say about it? We know about where the water went. Psalms 104, 1 through 9. Blessed the Lord, O my soul. O Lord my God, thou art very great. Thou art clothed with honor and majesty, who coverest thyself with light as with a garment, who stretchest out the heavens like a curtain, who layeth the beams of his chambers in the waters, who maketh the clouds his chariot, who walketh upon the wings of the wind, who maketh his angel spirits and his ministers a flaming fire. Notice what he says right there. Who layeth the beams of his chambers in the waters. Going on, it says, who laid the foundations of the earth, that it should not be removed forever. Thou coverest it with the deep, as with a garment. The waters stood above the mountains. Listen to that. Now, watch what it says here. At thy rebuke they fled. At the voice of thy thunder they hasted away. They go up by the mountains, they go down by the valleys, unto the place which thou hast founded for them. Thou hast set a bound that they may not pass over, that they turn not again to cover the earth. Job 26:10, he hath compassed the waters with bounds, until the day and night come to an end. Now, what he's saying there is that there's not going to be any end to day or night until the Lord comes back and judges the planet, and then there'll be no more night. There'll only be day. But what he's saying here is that the waters will never be able to do what they did before. There's bounds that they have. Jeremiah 5:22, fear ye not me, saith the Lord. Will ye not tremble at my presence? Will which have placed the sand for the bound of the sea by a perpetual decree that it cannot pass it? And though the waves thereof toss themselves, yet can they not prevail? Though they roar, yet can they not pass over it? Here we go again. The Lord gives certain when he told Noah that he wasn't going to flood the planet again, he meant it. Now, we may have some localized destruction because of waves, but it's not going to flood the planet to where it's going to destroy like it did in the biblical flood, is what I'm saying. And so you may have some, like I said, localized destruction because of weather patterns, but nothing like this. And that's what the Bible is stating here. The world will never be destroyed by a flood again. It's not going to happen. And so, lastly, what's really interesting here is that, you get the crust of the planet is about 20 miles average depth. 20 miles average depth. Now, it says here, a team of hydrogeologists has calculated that there is enough groundwater trapped in the earth to raise sea levels by 170 feet. Their estimates fit rough calculations made several decades ago. The team from the University of Victoria in Canada said that the top 1.2 miles of Earth's crust contain about 5,500 million cubic miles of groundwater. So there is still plenty of water underneath this planet to still do some devastation if the Lord willed it to be released. Let's go ahead and we'll stop right there. These past couple videos have been quite long, but the information, guys, is just detrimental. You need to have this information at your disposal. But we're going to come back to these topics again about this water here. We're going to see that again. There's actually things that I left off, and so we're going to come back to that. But I just thought, since we talked about mountain chains raising and lowering, that this kind of fit really good with that. But when we come back, we're going to go to theory number two. Theory number two on how people, creationists and secular scientists, believe that the animals and the fossil animals and plants that have been found at the North and South Poles, how they got there. Though we're centering most of our attention on Antarctica, okay? But you guys take care. I hope the Lord blesses you real good.